Hey guys, today I'm going to take you step by step through making a 7-layer tree. We're going to do background leaves, a trunk, and a foreground leaves. This is one of the most amazing parts about using acrylic, is the fact that you can layer on layer on layer, and you can do it all in one sitting. You're using just the basic paints you can get at Walmart. They're not super expensive, they're easy to use, there's lots of colors, you don't have to mix very many, and they are really good for entry-level stuff. So you don't need to worry about spending lots of money, fancy paints. I'm also going to be using some affordable brushes from Walmart as well. Nothing fancy, nothing over the top. So let's do it. So we're going to be using just some light blue and some white from the pack. And we're going to mix up a nice light blue. This is actually just going to be the background. You don't have to mix it too much. We're just going to make a nice... Make sure we make enough. There we go. That's going to stand out. And we're going to actually just paint kind of in the area where we want the tree. And you just give her. Don't worry about fussing over. This is a background color. It's going to get all blended in. And if you have to mix more, you just mix more. Just keep covering the canvas. Some of you may be asking why I'm not using an easel. This is a French slats, I think they're called. They're just kind of a groove thing that allows me just to put 2 attachments on the back of the canvas and I can hang it. On some of the smaller canvases, the bottom needs to be taped on so that it doesn't bounce around like this one is. We don't want any extra layers. We're going to make this as thin as possible. We want it to dry quickly so we can get on to the next layer. Very straightforward. Now, one thing that is really important is remembering exactly where you believe the light is coming from. And in this case, the light is actually coming from up top here and behind the tree. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually tape up a piece of string. And it's something basic, but I want the light point to be there. Now, why do I need this piece of string? Because I can use it to tell me where my light is coming from. And especially when we get to making some of these light rays, it really helps to keep straight rays. I've had some paintings where I've done them without the string, and you get a little bit crooked in the ray and it looks off. And so to make sure that the light is in the right place, that's what we're going to do. Now I have a little bit of extra white that I'm going to add to the top. I added a little bit of water to it, and I'm going to just kind of blend this in at the top, because this is where the light is coming from, and I want it a little bit lighter there just to create a bit of a gradient in the sky. Most of the sky you won't see. There we go. So now onto the leaves. What we're going to do is we're going to actually use yellow leaves first, and then we're going to use this medium green from the same pack, and we're going to build them up. But we're not going to put the trunk on. It's really important to not put the trunk on. So many people I see, they put the trunk on and then they try to make the depth. You always have leaves on the other side of the trunk. So this is a great way to create 3D depth to your tree, just like the one on the right, or on the left here. Just like the one on the left here. This painting started with yellow and then went into a lighter green. Now this is a painting I did 6 months ago or so. I got so many positive comments, I wanted to do a tutorial so that you guys can see kind of the steps and have an explanation. So in this painting, I did no trunk, no nothing, until I had the sky, the yellows, and the light green on the background. So that's what we're doing next. So we're going to start with yellows. So I've got myself yellow, and I've got myself a very old bristle fan brush. You can actually buy these on at Walmart or on Amazon. They are great, but make sure they're a bristle brush, not a blending. Make sure they're a bristle brush, not a blending brush. There's two different types of fan brushes. This one you can see the nubs of it, this one you can see the bristles are spaced apart. This makes great leaves. So that's what we're going to do. A little bit of water. And then we're going to just kind of imagine where we're going to want leaves. So we're going to want some leaves up here. Now remember, the yellow needs to be on the top of the leaves, or top of the bunches of branches. We'll put some, make sure we get some behind the trunk. Just putting them wherever you feel. Don't try to be too methodical about it. The sooner you learn to be random, the more your lifelike your trees are. The more you become, more you allow yourself to be random with your leaves, the more lifelike your trees will become. Too many people try and be perfect on making a tree, and they try and control exactly where the leaves are and make it symmetrical or make it exactly the way they had it in their mind. And it's better to just let the brushes and the clumps of the leaves happen. And yes, it looks a little bit funny right now with just the yellow in the sky. It's not something we're used to, and it's something that takes a bit of practice just to get your mind in the right place. But it really builds, and you'll see. So we've got yellow leaves, maybe a little bit more here, maybe a little bit more here, and some up top here. It's yellow leaves. Rinse off the brush and add our green to our palette. And because we're just building off of the previous color, we don't really have to wash our brush super good. So we've got our green, and we're going to go at it. Now the green we're going to kind of try and keep underneath. Can go into and over it a little bit, but we're going to kind of try and keep it underneath the yellow. And just make leaves. Again, nothing too fancy, nothing too exciting, at least not at this point, but the depth will certainly come. Remembering that we're going to put a trunk in the middle, so try and make your leaves kind of be extensions of that trunk and its branches. More water. Just mix it in. We're not being neat and tidy. We're not being precise. We're not measuring. We're not doing anything over mathematical. Just random brush strokes. And one thing that I like to do with my bristle fan brushes is I keep rotating it. It creates non-uniform. Sometimes some people try to keep the brush exactly the same orientation, and that can create a very non-natural tree. A lot of symmetrical parts to it, and that is not normal trees. Just keep adding green. Don't overthink it. I think that's all we're going to do for the green. Maybe a little bit more at the bottom. Now that's layer 1 with the yellow and layer 2 with the green, and we're going to let it dry, and then we're going to paint on the trunk and the texture to the trunk. Today I'm using just a brush like this. It's nothing fancy. And we are going to start making ourselves a trunk. I'll probably use a smaller brush for some of the finer details, but we're going to make a generic trunk. And we're going to start by kind of outlining it a little bit. I changed up brushes because that other brush didn't seem to be doing the job properly. Now don't be too picky about the edges, because we're going to actually go with a littler brush and create the ridges and bumps that you see along this tree. This is just the base of the trunk. You do want to fill it in completely with black. And this one we're going to actually do a little bit different. We're going to have another trunk. Could be a little bit skinnier, but it's going to be another trunk. As with every tree, you always make sure you get a little bit of a bigger base to the trunk and a smaller top, as it starts looking a little bit off balance, like it's going to tip over. And then we're just going to fill in the bottom. We're going to create some roots and textures and stuff. as we go. Right now we're just going to paint the bottom all black. It's going to start creating the depths and the contrast that we want to get a real 3D looking tree. Now you could actually put multiple more layers of the leaves in the background, and if you're really going for a really nice 3D depth, you can do more layers. Today I'm only doing 7 layers just to show you how easy it is to actually create a depth for a tree. So I have now filled it in the black, and I'm going to use a small tip brush. I'm going to pick up some of that black. I'm just going to edge everything. And kind of just put it on and wiggle your brush around. Just creating a roughness to the bark. In our case, we're not doing a smooth bark tree. We want some texture and some bumps. I like to put my pinky on to help me stable. Just when you put your pinky on, make sure you are not putting on wet paint. I've done that before. They can always be fixed when you make mistakes like that. And if you can see, I'm just going randomly. There's nothing, no rhyme or reason, just adding random textures to the outline. You don't want your bumps to be too big on the branches, except for as lower you go, the bigger the bumps can be, because that's the older part of the tree. Just keep adding them, creating texture, and then eventually we'll get to adding more branches. See how it starts creating the desired effect. Natural look. So the one on my left, the one that I've already painted, that one I wanted it to be even more bright and brilliant, so I used a pure white background. I didn't use a blue. This one I want it to be a little bit darker, a little bit more midday-ish. Just to change it up a little bit. But you can do either way. If you want to check out this video, I will put the link in the description for you guys to watch. All right, now all right, so now we're going to add some branches. Just stir in a little bit of water to my black, helps it flow better. Sometimes people want to put on lots of branches, lots of little sticks and twigs. I prefer to go a little bit more gentle on the leaves or on the branches. So this is actually just the base of the branches. And I will refine them again with a lighter brush. I think this is going to be the kind of tree that kind of has some sprouts coming out of the bottom. It makes for a more interesting approach, in my opinion. Okay, move on to a bit of a thinner brush. A little bit easier to add the details and make it sharp and crisp. If you plan on ever painting really fine, sharp details, I would recommend you actually look into finding some tutorials, some help on creating wood panel canvases. So they're an MDF wood that's been, or it's probably like a 1/8 inch thick, and then they're painted and sanded and painted and sanded, and they become a really smooth surface, which allows your brush to flow really smoothly along the canvas. One thing that canvas itself does is always has the texture, which is great for picking up paint, but it's not always best for getting fine details. You can, if you make sure your paint is watery enough, get reasonably sharp details. Once again, we're just making random branches. Nothing too particular. One thing that you will know and learn is that the less expensive paint doesn't always flow the same way that the more expensive paint. It doesn't always work the same. It still works completely usable, but the more expensive paints, the ones with a little bit more polymer, a little bit more thought put into their creation, they can flow really nicely. And they also hold their color very well. So we just finished up painting the branches. You can see the depth starting to build with the sky and then the leaves building towards the trunk. We're going to add the texture to the trunk now, keeping in mind which branches we want to have in the foreground and which branches are behind, so that we can properly texture them with the highlights that we're going to put on. And then we're going to add 2 more layers of leaves on top of this, and you'll start seeing even more of the 3D depth. One thing to note is that you can use any colors you want for this. You can start with the dark and move to the light. You can start with the light like we have and move to the dark. You can use a purple, pink, red, blue leaf colors to create a fantasy type tree or a fall type tree, using a little bit more oranges and browns. You can just use your imagination to create the tree that you want. This is the one we have, and we're going to use a raw umber brown. So we're going to add some raw umber, so it's a little bit lighter than the black. And this is what we're going to use for the first layer of highlights. And this one's going to be a little bit more aggressive, and then the following one we're going to actually just mix in some white with that raw umber. And once again, because we're building on black, we don't have to clean our brush super good. Mix in a little bit of water. We're just going to start by mixing in water in this little section here. And we're going to remember the direction of our light. So on the right hand side, the light is going to be on the left and top. On the left hand side of the canvas, the light is going to be on the right and the top of the branches. So we're just going to add squiggles. Again, this is just kind of dabbing the brown on there. We're just creating texture. You know, we're going to actually mix in a little bit of white, just so you guys can see it better on camera. I've added my white. I'm going to mix that in. We're going to just lighten up the brown a little bit. Just really want you guys to be able to see what's going on. And maybe a little bit more brown. There we go. Let's try that. Oh yeah, that's better. So it's not super dark. Again, we're going to add another layer. So here I have this branch that's going up and down. I want this one closer to me. So that means I don't put highlights there, but the light is coming from here. So we're going to put highlights on this branch. We're going to actually put highlights along the edge of it. That's not really visible, but we're going to make it visible by putting these pieces in there. So you can start seeing that this is a definitive branch, and it is in front of. So we're just going to keep adding. Probably going to add more of the texture to the top branches. But again, all I'm doing is I'm just dabbing on, bobbing, dabbing, little texture pieces. I'm not drawing lines, I'm not doing anything fancy, just little texture dots. Kind of more like little short dash lines. And don't get too particular over the smaller branches. They'll probably get mostly covered by leaves in the end. So I want this one to be on top. So these ones in the middle, we're actually going to add a little bit to both sides. Creates the effect that we're looking for. Now it's really up to you what kind of texture of bark you want. I'm going for a little bit more of a dotty line. This one had a little bit more lines in it. But you are free to pick the texture that you want. You can even make the tree trunk smooth. I personally really like texture. If they're too smooth, there's not a lot you can add, but it does make good types of trees depending on what you're trying to achieve. So you make the decision, you're the artist. Oops, too much paint on the brush. Normally I probably would do this amount a little bit darker, but it's not showing up on the camera, so we're going to make it work and have fun doing that for you guys. Okay, I want this one. This one behind. As you get further down to the base of the trunk, we do less and less highlights because the real chance of there being shadows and different things passing there. I'm not going to do a lot on the rocks or trunks or anything like that. Just get the illusion that there's more stuff going on here, but nothing fancy. So that is the trunk. Again, nothing too fancy, nothing over the top. Not trying to do everything. You can sure start seeing the depth. And this, usually you probably don't need to let it necessarily dry super much. I'm going to actually just take this brown that I have and I'm going to make a lighter version of it. It's going to be fairly light. And this we're going to do very sparingly to add some highlights in a few of the spots that I feel like deserve them. These you try and keep right on the edge of your branches. Don't need to add a lot of this, just enough to make things kind of pop a little bit. So some of the key differences between acrylics and oil paints tends to be the ability to blend. A lot of people find it more difficult to blend and make gradients on your canvas with acrylics, and there's some truth to that, but if you use the right type of acrylics or the right type of additive, you can really make them last long enough for you to make some beautiful gradients. And the thing I really like is that I can do a painting in one sitting. I don't have to sit and wait. I started my painting years with oil paints. Actually, if you want the truth, I started painting when I was 12 on some homemade canvases that were not very good. And I used those old modeling paints that come in the little glass jars. That's how I got myself started. I had been drawing and other artist type things, but then I really wanted to start painting. I remember looking and I saw some of Robert Bateman's paintings and some of Van Gogh's paintings, and I was quite inspired that I wanted to learn how to do painting like that. Now I'm not the best, but I sure love what I get to do. So now we have actually 5 of our layers on our canvas. We've got the yellow, the green, and then we have 3 different layers of colors for the trunk. You can start seeing the texture. Next, we're going to actually add the 2 next layers of leaves, and we're going to add a few strokes of grass, kind of like we've done in here. But we're not going to add a lot in the back here, or in the bottom here, because we want that to be the dark contrast. All right, so we've got a darker green. This comes in the set. One of the nice things about these small pack sets is they come with, in this case, 4 different greens, so we can just continually use a different green. You don't necessarily have to mix. Welcome to mix, but you don't have to mix, so that makes it just one step simpler. So we're going to use this darker green. So I'm just using it in the same spot as the other green, so I know how much darker. And then we're going to add leaves. And in this case, we're going to add less leaves than we did to start. We want to see those background leaves. We don't want to cover everything. Once again, we're going to imagine where the branches might protrude and make the leaves kind of show up. Going over the trunk is important. When I started teaching, I saw lots of people trying to not wreck up their beautiful trunks. And there's some truth to that because people made beautiful trunks, but the only way to really get the depth and texture that we want is to go over your trunks with your leaves. There's no tree that just keeps one side picture perfect. At least not in my experience. You can start seeing the depth come out very quickly. You don't have to be a experienced artist to do this. Just willing to give it a try and just take the steps to do the layers. The more layers you do, tends to be the nicer result, but if you do too many layers, then you start muddying it. You start losing the background colors pretty quick. A little bit more here. And remember, we're going to put one more layer on top. So that's the right side. You can see how the right side feels a lot more alive, just like that. And the left side still has some depth to come out. So here we go, left side. So some paints that you get, like these ones, are a little bit more translucent than I would like. I like paints that are fairly opaque. It allows me to water them down or thin them out to get the translucency that I want. But you can't, it's very hard to add opaqueness to your paints. But again, for cheap Walmart paints, these are very good. I've bought some on Amazon trying out cheap paints, and some of them you can't even use, like they're just terrible. So check the reviews on the paint. You don't have to spend a lot of money. Just keep adding. Don't want to add too much. That's always the key. Add a little bit of texture to the ground here. So those are the branches. You can see the life already in the painting. At first it starts looking a little bit funny, but as you build that depth, it really builds on itself. Now before I change to a different color, I'm gonna actually use this color as well. And we're gonna add some just grasses, just really basic, nothing super fancy. Make sure we water our paint down enough so that we can it'll flow nicely. You don't have to do the yellow. You could, if you really wanted to, you could start with the yellow and stuff, but you'd have to have done that already. I don't think it's necessary. Most of the time that the grass underneath is fairly shaded, so the yellow, the brilliance doesn't have to be there. So that's all we're doing, just adding a little bit of grass. Put some in here between the leaves, or between the branches, not the leaves. Again, random. If you make one bunch of 3, try not to make all of your grasses bunches of 3. Sometimes have a tendency to just repeat same thing over again because it worked. Then you start getting looks too man-made. So that's it. That's all we're doing for that color. And the next thing we're going to add is just a little bit of a darker green yet. Alright, so it is dry now, and we are going to add a slightly darker green. I know some people suggest you can even use a black. I'm hesitant to use black. Black is a very strong color. I like it for the trunk in this case, but for the leaves, because leaves let light through, I think black is too harsh of a color for the leaves. So not a lot of this. It's not going to be super bold. You're not going to see a lot of it. I think mostly just adding some low lights to the bottoms of some of these clumps of leaves is really the only thing I'm going to be doing with it. Maybe adding a few strokes here and there. And yes, they're not strokes exactly, they're kind of dabs, but the brush strokes. Probably use this just to add a few dabs in some of the blue areas. Create a little bit more life to some of those places. So overall, I'm very happy with how that's turned out. It definitely shows the light and the brilliance behind it. At first, I was a little bit concerned that the blue was going to be too dark, but it's turned out exactly the way that I wanted it to, where you can actually feel the lighter blue at the top, darker blue at the bottom. Gives you kind of a in the forest feel. I'm going to add just a few more pieces of grass, and then that's it. If you want to at this point, you can add some yellow highlights to to the bunches of leaves. That's totally doable. Add a little bit of green to some of these places down here. Doesn't have to be super well thought out, planned. Sometimes the best paintings are the ones that are not planned. Unless you're trying to do an animal or a creature, then planning is always good. So I had a lot of fun painting this. It's been a pleasure to take you along on the journey. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe, and join me next time. My wife Kristen does a bunch of acrylic pours on her channel, and then I do some of these paintings. And let me know if you enjoyed the tutorial style. Sometimes I just do the painting and let you watch. This is a bit more of instructional. So until next time.